You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
And welcome to Wise Guys. These guys know sports on this Wednesday, August the 18th. In the house with your boy, Trey Larkins. Everybody remember, go and follow Wise Guys on Twitter at WiseGuys_H. Also on Facebook, Wise Guys. We live here on the Worldwide Sports Network. Go and follow the Worldwide Sports Network as well on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. The Worldwide Sports Network is available at your disposal and all the latest in sports news. You in the house with your boy Trey Larkins on this beautiful Wednesday evening. It feels good outside in the Cincinnati area. We get close to fall, ladies and gentlemen. So, we get close to that. It's a hoodie season. It's hoodie season. I love hoodie season because we know football is around the corner. I got an action jam-packed show ahead. We're going to talk about the LA Rams. Who has more pressure this year? Is it Matthew Stafford or is it Sean McVay? Also, should Damian Lillard want out of Portland? And also, Jermaine O'Neal, he just released a new documentary on the Malice at The Palice. I'm going to give y'all my opinion about the documentary and my overall thoughts about the situation that took place in Detroit in the Malice at The Palace. But let's get right to it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk NBA as the Philadelphia 76ers, they finalized a new 4-year, $196 million supermax extension for Joel Embiid. This will make him a Philadelphia 76er through the 2026-27 NBA season. And Joel Embiid represented himself in negotiations, and he was going to get a total of $261 million. The four-time All-Star was already set to make $65 million over the final 2 years of his current deal. So the Sixers have locked up their man, Joel Embiid. Let's get right into it. And let's talk about Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. And if I believe Joel Embiid will win a championship during this contract. So when I look at the Philadelphia 76ers roster as currently constructed, okay, you got Ben Simmons on the roster, Tebow, you got, Tobias Harris. I don't believe the Philadelphia 76ers as currently constructed can win an NBA championship. I've made it very clear about how I feel on Ben Simmons and him not being able to attempt perimeter shots. And I believe that in order to win a championship, as the point guard, you need to attempt perimeter shots. You don't have to hit them at the elite level, but at least attempt perimeter shots. And we know that's an area that Ben Simmons has struggled. Rajon Rondo wasn't the greatest perimeter shooter, but he was able to win a championship with the Boston Celtics, in the Big Three era with Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett. Giannis isn't a great perimeter shooter, but he was able to win a championship this past season. The biggest issue that I have with Ben Simmons is he doesn't even attempt perimeter shots. So I don't believe the Philadelphia 76ers can win a championship, even with Joel Embiid on their team, because of their roster construction at this moment. I think Joel Embiid will need another co-star to go on the ride with him throughout the course of a playoff run. And I don't think Ben Simmons is that guy. Do I believe Ben Simmons has talent? Of course. Of course he has talent. He has great athleticism. He's a tremendous passer of the basketball. Defensively, he's one of the best players we have in the NBA. But the problem with Ben Simmons is he's a liability offensively. And that's the issue, with the Philadelphia 76ers and why I believe their chances of winning an NBA championship is very slim. Very, very slim. And when you look at the city of Philadelphia, Joel Embiid, he needs someone who embraces playing in Philly. Philly is a tough place to play. Ask Markelle Fultz. He was drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers. And after his first year, Sixers fans was ready to be done with Markelle Fultz. Y'all saw what happened this past year with Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles and how they gave up on Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz in this, in 2017, he had an MVP caliber season, but he was never available in the postseason when it mattered the most. And when you play in that city for those teams like the Philadelphia 76ers, like the Philadelphia Eagles, those fan bases are heavily invested in their teams. And once you fall out of their grace, they don't normally allow you back in, they're back in their grace. They don't normally allow you back on their good side. And that's what I believe is going on right now with Ben Simmons. But when you look at Joel Embiid, I believe Joel Embiid is big time. I believe he's big time. I believe Joel Embiid is a top 3 big man in the game. And we talk about the best big mans in the game. I'm thinking about Joker. I'm thinking about Anthony Davis. And Joel Embiid is in that conversation as well. I know the Joker won NBA MVP this year. And I got a lot of respect for the Joker. And he was able to pull the Denver Nuggets single-handedly to the second round of the NBA playoffs. They ran into Chris Paul and Devin Booker. But the Joker was absolutely sensational this year. He played great. He's a great passer of the basketball. And even though he doesn't have great athleticism, he's great in the low post, and he hits his free throw shots at an elite rate. I believe Joel Embiid is better than the Joker. I think Anthony Davis is better than both when he's healthy. But Joel Embiid is big time. He's fresh off a season, averaging 28 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game on 51% shooting from the floor. And he's willing to talk trash to opponents. He doesn't back down from any challenge. Joel Embiid embraces playing in Philly, embraces that fan base. He interacts with fans throughout the course of games. And in the playoffs, he doesn't have a drop-off statistically. And this year, he played with a torn meniscus. Playing with a torn meniscus, Joel Embiid still played like an elite player in the NBA. And I believe he's well-deserved of this new contract. He negotiated the entire deal himself. So kudos to Joel Embiid. This is well-deserved. I know everybody wants to talk about his commitment and whether or not he can stay healthy. I'll get to that here in a bit. But when it comes to him as an overall player, it is undeniable how great Joel Embiid is. 4-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA second-team player. He's a 3-time NBA All-Defensive second-team player. He has no weaknesses offensively, none. He can shoot the perimeter shot. He can get down in the low post and bang in the low post with other bigs in the NBA. He can go to the free throw line and hit his free throw shots at an elite level. The man is shooting over 80% from the free throw line for his career. Unlike Giannis, unlike Shaq in his day, Embiid hits his free throw shots. So you can't just hack a Embiid because Embiid will go to the free throw line and hit his free throw shots at an elite rate. He's a great player. And I think he can be a first or second option on a championship team. He's good for at least 25 a night. Book Joel Embiid in for 25 a night. And he's going to shoot efficiently from the floor. And he's big time, in my opinion. But there are 2 issues that I have with Joel Embiid. 2 issues. Only 2. Only 2. Durability has been an issue for Joel Embiid. It's been an issue. Over the last 4 years, Joel Embiid has missed an average of 20 games per season. And like I mentioned earlier, he played this postseason with a torn meniscus. We know he's injury prone. That's the reason why he fell in the draft. He had injury issues dating back to his days at Kansas. And in his career, he's missed 295 total games. So I understand why there are people out there that are saying that they would have been reluctant to give Joel Embiid this supermax contract, considering how injury prone he is and how durability has been an issue throughout the course of his career. I completely understand. I understand. But let's not forget, this season, this year, Joel Embiid averaged, again, over 28 and a half points per game. That was a career high. He averaged, he shot 51% from the floor. That was a career high. He shot 38% from three-point range. That was a career high. And from the free throw line, he shot 86%. Career high. So he's big time. So you got to take the bad with the good with Joel Embiid. He's going to produce. The question is, can he play when it matters the most? And that's in the playoffs. So again, I understand why there are people out there that have their issues with the Sixers signing Joel Embiid to this new contract, being that it's the supermax. Again, $196 million over the next 4 years. I understand because of the durability issues, but that is the only thing that you can say is an issue when it comes to Joel Embiid as a player. Just the durability. That's it. And one other thing that I have an issue with Joel Embiid. Sometimes he shoots too many damn jump shots. He shoots too many damn perimeter shots, and he bails the opposing team's defense out by throwing up perimeter shots. Okay? Joel Embiid, you don't need to shoot as many perimeter shots as you do. Now, I understand this year he averaged and shot 38% from three-point range. But we need Joel Embiid down in the low post. We need him banging in the low post because nobody can guard Embiid. He is unguardable. He is unguardable. No one can guard him in the low post. So if you're Doc Rivers, if you're Daryl Murray, you want Joel Embiid down in the low post as much as possible. And you want him to stop settling for so many perimeter shots. Stop settling for so many perimeter shots. So those are the only two issues that I have with Joel Embiid. His durability and him shooting too many perimeter shots. Other than that, I think you can win a championship with Joel Embiid. But again, the problem is this Philadelphia 76ers team, the way they are currently constructed, I don't believe they could beat the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series in the playoffs. I don't believe they could beat the Milwaukee Bucks in a 7-game series in the playoffs. The Miami Heat is questionable. I think that could go 7 games. They just brought in Kyle Lowry, still got Jimmy Butler, still got Bam on that team. That is a 7-game series, Miami, Philly. They'll beat the Knicks. They can beat the Hawks, even though the Hawks beat them this year. They can beat teams like that, though. It's a toss-up because we saw Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks beat the Sixers this year. But it's a toss-up. But they can beat the Knicks. They can beat the Pacers. They can beat the Raptors in a 7-game series. But I don't think they can compete with the top of the Eastern Conference, and that's the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks as they are currently constructed. Let's transition to some NFL, and let's talk about the rookie quarterbacks that played over the weekend. So the rookie quarterbacks, they all debuted over the weekend. You had Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields. So statistically, let's go over the numbers. Trevor Lawrence for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he went 6 of 9, threw for 71 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Zach Wilson, he went 6 of 9, threw for 63 passing yards. He didn't throw a touchdown or interception as well. Trey Lance, he went 5 of 14 and 128 passing yards, one big touchdown play on one drive, and then he had no interceptions. Justin Fields, 14 of 20, 142 passing yards, 1 touchdown, where the player who caught the touchdown pass had enough time to call his significant other and ask her what she was going to cook for dinner. That's how open he was. It was an easy touchdown throw for Justin Fields. So, Pro Football Focus, they graded each quarterback in their performance over the weekend. They gave Mac Jones 82 for his passing grade for his first preseason game, and he played on Thursday against the Washington football team. They gave Zach Wilson a 78.8 for his performance against the Giants. They gave Justin Fields a 64.2 for his performance against the Miami Dolphins. Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, I can't exactly remember who they played against. Cleveland. They played against Cleveland. They gave him a 58.5, and they gave Trey Lance 49.0. That was Pro Football Focus passing grades among first-round rookie quarterbacks. So let's talk about it. And let me give my grades, each quarterback and their performance this past week. Let's start off with Trevor Lawrence. I thought Trevor made some nice throws in the game against the Cleveland Browns defense. He doesn't have much to work with in Jacksonville. That's one of the worst rosters in the NFL. They won't have a chance to compete in the AFC South. We know the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans are the cream of the crop in that division. But given the circumstances, given what he's playing with, I thought Trevor Lawrence actually threw the ball pretty well in his first preseason game, being the first quarterback taken off the board and the first overall player in the NFL draft this year. So I'll give Trevor Lawrence a C+ for his performance. C+. I thought he was average. He had some good throws, but he had some moments in the pocket where there was a few times where he could have got rid of the ball sooner, but I'll give him a C+. Zach Wilson, I was actually impressed with. I was very impressed with Zach Wilson. And they say that Zach Wilson is comparable to Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to go that far. Y'all know how great I believe Aaron Rodgers is, being that he is my Packers quarterback. And he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So that is a stretch. But Zach Wilson was very impressive in his preseason debut with the New York Jets. I'm going to give Zach Wilson a B+ for his first preseason action against the New York Giants. Trey Lance, out of all the rookie quarterbacks, I believe he was the least impressive. I think he has tremendous upside, but he's going to have to get more reps and gain more experience before he actually will be effective as a quarterback. He went 5 of 14, so he was inefficient. And he had the one deep throw down the field that was a touchdown pass. That's why he had 128 passing yards. That's where the majority of his yards came from. But I thought he was inaccurate on some of his throws. I thought he really didn't have command of the Niners offense like Zach Wilson did and like Trevor Lawrence did. So I thought he was the least impressive out of all the rookie quarterbacks. But I do see the talent in Trey Lance. I see why Kyle Shanahan traded up in the draft to get him. This could be because he hasn't played in over a year and a half. Unlike Justin Fields, unlike Trevor Lawrence, he hasn't played football in over a year and a half. That could be the reason why we saw him struggle in his preseason debut. He has to get more reps. And that's why I said on last week's show, I said I like the fact that Kyle Shanahan is going to insert Trey Lance into certain situations and not just throw him into the starting lineup for the 49ers. I think that's going to help him get his feet wet, help him get more reps, in live game action, because you can play and practice all you want. You can do all the 7-on-7 drills, all you want in training camp. It doesn't matter until you get on the field in live game action. And that's what I believe Trey Lance needs more than any of the rookie quarterbacks because he hasn't played in over a year and a half. He needs to be inserted into situational football. That way, once he takes over for Jimmy Garoppolo as a starting quarterback for the 49ers, he'll have some experience under his belt being in those situations. So, which we know at some point he's going to take over as starting quarterback for the 49ers. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's going to happen. Either Jimmy G is going to get injured. I don't want no guy to get injured, but we know that's what has happened throughout the course of his career. Either an injury will take place or his play will not be at a level that Kyle Shanahan likes, so he's going to be forced to have to play Trey Lance. But I'm going to give Trey Lance I'm going to give him a D. I'm going to give him a D. I'm just being honest from what I saw. I wasn't really impressed with Trey Lance, but I believe as he goes along in preseason, his grade will improve. Justin Fields is absolutely sensational. Justin Fields gets an A- from me. And I've already been on record, and I told everyone that I believe Matt Nagy needs to quit playing around and name Justin Fields his starting quarterback. I thought Justin Fields made plays when it was necessary, and I thought he had command of the Chicago Bears offense. The one touchdown pass that he did have, again, it was to a wide open tight end up the left sideline. He was completely wide open. It was probably the easiest throw Justin Fields will have this entire season. But he did fumble, I believe, in the game against the Miami Dolphins. He did fumble on one particular play. You got to clean that up, Justin. Got to clean that up. You cannot fumble the football. But other than that, I thought Justin Fields played pretty good for the Chicago Bears in his preseason debut. Everybody, remember to go follow Wise Guys on Twitter at WiseGuys_Waits. Also on Facebook, Wise Guys. Be sure to follow Wise Guys on Instagram at These Guys Know Sports. So they were talking about the other day when I was grabbing some food. I was at B-Dubs grabbing some food. And y'all know B-Dubs ain't the same as it once was. I'm just going to be honest. It's not the same. There's plenty of places that I would go to get wings before B-Dubs right now. Now, 6-10 years ago, B-Dubs was the best in the business. But I was at B-Dubs, and they were talking about, which rookie quarterback has the best chance to succeed in their first year. And so that's an interesting question because when you look at the quarterbacks, the four quarterbacks who I just talked about, Zach Wilson plays for the Jets, and he's playing for a coach and Robert Saleh, who is known for his defense and him having a great defense when he was in San Francisco. He's not an offensive-minded head coach. He's not like Matt LaFleur. He's not like Sean McVay. He's not like Kyle Shanahan. Saleh is a defensive coach. So I always say when it comes to rookie quarterbacks and young quarterbacks in the NFL in general, if I'm a young quarterback in the NFL, I would prefer to have an offensive-minded head coach because they'll be able to help me in my growth as a quarterback more so than the defensive head coach. That doesn't mean that these defensive coaches don't know offensive football because clearly if they're playing deep, they're coaching defense, they go up against some of the top offenses in the NFL. That just means that that's not their expertise. And Robert Saleh is not an offensive-minded coach. And then the New York Jets they're not going to be a playoff team. So Zach Wilson is at the bottom of my list when it comes to quarterbacks who will succeed in their first year. That doesn't mean he's not going to have flashes that he can be a franchise NFL quarterback. But do I believe he has a chance to lead his team to the playoffs? I do not. The Miami Dolphins are better than the Jets. The New England Patriots are better than the Jets. Now, Trevor Lawrence is playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm going to talk about Tim Tebow here in a bit, but I got my questions on whether or not Urban Meyer can be a quality NFL head coach. I know Urban Meyer is very accomplished at the collegiate level, but I got my questions about Urban Meyer being able to lead a group of men as a football head coach in the NFL. Him bringing in Tebow in training camp was very, very, let's just say, it was a red flag. It was a red flag. I know he cut Tim Tebow the other day, but it was a red flag for me. But we'll see what happens. I don't believe Trevor Lawrence is going to succeed this year, as far as getting his team to the postseason. Jacksonville's not very good. They have one of the worst teams in the NFL when it comes to roster from top to bottom. Trey Lance has a chance to succeed his first year as a rookie whenever he's inserted into the starting lineup, for the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have a shot to compete for a Super Bowl. Out of all the rookie quarterbacks, I believe Trey Lance has the best chance to succeed and get his team to the postseason because of the pieces around him. They have a top 10 defense in the NFL. They have a great play caller in Kyle Shanahan, who has a great system in place for Trey Lance to succeed. So I think Trey Lance actually has a shot to get his team to the playoffs more than any other quarterbacks. I'll put Justin Fields second. The Bears went to the playoffs last year, even though they were 8-8, with Trubisky. They made it to the postseason last year. Now, I don't believe they're going to make any noise in the playoffs, but they have a chance to compete in the NFC North. They're not going to win the North because Aaron Rodgers owns the division, but they'll compete. And then Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones is third. Mac Jones playing for the greatest coach in NFL history in Bill Belichick, playing in an organization like the New England Patriots. He has a chance to compete for a wild card spot in the AFC. He's not going to win the division because Miami and Buffalo are both better. But I think Mac Jones and the New England Patriots can compete for a playoff spot. So that's my order. Trey Lance 1, Justin Fields 2, Mac Jones 3, 4 Trevor Lawrence, 5 Zach Wilson, give or take. Which rookie quarterback has the best chance to succeed and get their team to the playoffs? And I believe it is Trey Lance and then Justin Fields and then Mac Jones. Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson is not happening. It's not happening. Not in your first year. Let's transition back to some NBA and let's talk about Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers. So Damian Lillard was on Twitter the other day, and someone with the Twitter account, they made a tweet and they said, how much y'all want to bet that before the NBA season starts, the Lakers will still get Damian Lillard? Laugh out loud. Dame responded and said, bet $1 million. So would Damian Lillard be making a mistake staying with the Blazers? That's the question that we asking here on Wise Guys. Would he be making a mistake staying with the Portland Trailblazers? So first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, there's something that I have to admit, and I want to break this down for you, okay? Everybody who knows me, they know I am a Carmelo Anthony fan. I don't apologize for it. I'm a Melo fan dating back to his days at Syracuse. I've always been a Carmelo Anthony fan. Folks always talked about what Melo doesn't do well, and I always said we should appreciate him for what he does do well. During the course of his career, when he was in Denver and when he was with the Knicks, Melo was a bona fide elite NBA scoring machine. Make no mistake about it. Melo was a bona fide scoring machine. He's one of the greatest scorers in this generation, and he's one of the greatest scorers of all time. He is a legend. He's going to go down as a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I'm happy that my man Melo finally has a chance to compete for an NBA championship with the LA Lakers. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, top 5 duo in the NBA. You bring in a point guard like Russell Westbrook, one of the best point guards in the NBA. Melo has his best opportunity to win a championship. So, y'all know those about a year and a half or so, Melo was out of the league, which was absolutely ridiculous. He got released by the Houston Rockets because they said he didn't fit their system. And Portland brought Melo in for a workout. They signed Melo to a contract. And so before Melo went to Portland, I was already a Damian Lillard fan. I respected Damian Lillard. I respected Dame dating back to his days when he had the game winner over Russell Westbrook and Paul George, sent them home in the first round of the NBA playoffs. When was that, in 2018, I believe? 2018? Might have been 2019. But Damian Lillard dropped 50, waved goodbye to Paul George and Russell Westbrook, sent them home packing, and sent them both out of Oklahoma City. That was the last that we remember the Thunder as being a playoff contender. Damian Lillard ended their season and ended their playoff contention as we know it. I've always been a Damian Lillard fan. And so when Melo joined the Blazers, I was in support of Damian Lillard staying in Portland because loyalty is everything to me. Being a Melo fan, I understood why Melo was so loyal to the Knicks. He wanted to win with the Knicks. And I understand players that are loyal to their teams that drafted them. I understand that. I really, really do. And so I was a big proponent of Damian Lillard staying in Portland. But once Melo signed with the Lakers, and now that he's going to be in Tinseltown with Bron, Damian Lillard needs to get the hell out of Portland. Quick, fast, and in a hurry. Quick, fast, and in a hurry. And there's multiple reasons why Dame will be making a mistake playing in Portland and staying in Portland. Number one, everybody already knows. The Portland, Trailblazers, they aren't a free agent destination. Free agents aren't lining up to go to Portland to play. So there's no free agents going to say, oh, I'm going to Portland to play with the Trailblazers. It's not New York. It's not LA. It's not Chicago. It's not happening. Dame asked LeBron about the 7 years he spent in Cleveland trying to recruit free agents to come to Cleveland to play with him and the Cavaliers. It did not happen. Free agents did not come to Cleveland to play with LeBron James. They're not going to go to Portland to play with Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard's already been there for 9 years. He's been there for 9 years. And if no one has came to play with him yet, it's not going to happen. That's one reason. No free agents decided not to play in Portland. Another reason is the Portland Trailblazers, they have the longest streak of playoff appearances with 8 in the NBA. Longest active streak of getting to the postseason in the NBA. That's the Portland Trailblazers. And the closest that Damian Lillard has gotten to an NBA Finals is when he went up against the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals and got swept by a KD-less Warriors team. That was the farthest Damian Lillard has ever went in the playoffs, and it's been the same story for Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers over and over, year after year after year. And the definition of insanity is when you continue to do the same thing and expect different results. If Damian Lillard remains in Portland and he continues to play at an elite level, being a top 10 player in the NBA, because Damian Lillard is a top 10 player in the NBA, top 5 point guard in the NBA, by far. If he continues to play at an elite level and lead the Portland Trailblazers to the playoffs, they'll be a first-round exit, maybe a second-round exit at the most. They're not going to get to the NBA Finals. It's not going to happen. And Damian Lillard is a great player. This was this year. This year, in the regular season, Damian Lillard averaged 29 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, 8 assists per game on 45% shooting from the floor, 39% shooting from three-point range. He elevated his game in the postseason. In the postseason, he averaged 34 points per game, 10 assists per game, on 46% shooting from the floor and 45% shooting from three-point range. So Damian Lillard is big time. He is an elite player in the NBA. Top 10 player, in my opinion. Today, the ratings came out for NBA 2K. They got Damian Lillard's rating 94. He is rated the same as Luka, and I think Dame is better than Luka. Right now, we know he's clutch. We know Dame time is when Dame steps his game up and rises for the occasion. He always ready for the occasion. So I believe in Damian Lillard as a player. But we look at the rest of the roster for the Trailblazers. I believe CJ McCollum is a good player. He averaged 23 points per game, 5 assists per game, but he's only 6'3". Dame is 6'1". So Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, they are similar players. Damian Lillard is just better than CJ, but they are similar type of players. If Damian Lillard was playing with an athletic small forward like Kawhi Leonard, like a Giannis, maybe even like a Pascal Siakam, even though Pascal Siakam is not on the same level as Giannis and Kawhi. If he was playing with the Kevin Durant, I would say stay in Portland. But the combination with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, even though it saddens me to say this, they're too small of a backcourt to win an NBA championship. They're too miniature. When you look at the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, they are the greatest shooting backcourt in NBA history. But also, defensively, when he's healthy, Klay Thompson is an elite defender. The Portland Trail Blazers don't have that in Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. So that's why I don't believe Damian Lillard can win a championship with CJ McCollum being his co-star. They play too much alike. Damian Lillard is better, but they play very similar. So I think their time has come and gone. And if they can trade for a more athletic small forward or a power forward like Karl-Anthony Towns, maybe they could compete for a championship. But until that happens, I think Damian Lillard needs to get out of Portland. I believe so. In order for him to win a championship, he needs to get out of Portland. He's not getting any younger, ladies and gentlemen. He's not getting any younger. He's already played 9 years in Portland. Already played 9 years. So let's transition back to some NFL. Let's talk about the LA Rams and Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. The LA Rams, they traded for Matthew Stafford earlier this offseason. Last year, the LA Rams, they finished 10-6 on the season. They lost in the divisional round of the playoffs to the Packers. They went to the Super Bowl in 2018 with Jared Goff, and they lost to Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. This was Matthew Stafford. Earlier this offseason, he was working, with Sean McVay, and he was talking to reporters about working with Sean McVay. Matthew Stafford, quote, "It's really fun challenging each other. He's trying to get the best out of me, and I'm trying to get the best out of him. That kind of friendly, fun competition and pushing each other is what it's all about. This is courtesy of Jonathan Jones of CBSSports.com. That was Matthew Stafford on Sean McVay. So it had me thinking, who's under more pressure? Is it Sean McVay or is it Matthew Stafford? For me, it's Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is under the most pressure more than any other player in the NFL this upcoming NFL season. And the reason why I say Matthew Stafford is under more pressure than Sean McVay, because I got my issues with Sean McVay. Since he went to the Super Bowl, Sean McVay, his teams offensively, they struggled and they have went down year after year after year since he got to the Super Bowl in 2018. They went from being ranked first to being ranked second to being ranked 11th to last year being ranked 22nd. Their defense, meanwhile, was ranked first last year, being led by Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Being led by Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, their defense was ranked first last year. So you can make a legitimate argument that the Rams' defense has been carrying the team for the last few years. And we know Sean McVay, his signature is offense. So I got my issues with Sean McVay, and I think he has some pressure on him. When it comes to head coaches in the NFL, Sean McVay is at the top of my list for coaches who have the most pressure on them heading into this NFL season. But Matthew Stafford has more pressure on him than Sean McVay. Sean McVay got the LA Rams to the Super Bowl in 2018. He got to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff as his quarterback. Ladies and gentlemen, at one point, there was a conversation amongst fans, amongst the media, about who's better, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, or Dak Prescott. After the dust has settled, we know Dak Prescott is in a class of his own. And if you're starting an NFL franchise and you have to choose with Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz, and Jared Goff, we are all choosing Dak Prescott if he's healthy. I remember Jared Goff been in that conversation at one point. But we've seen Jared Goff since his Super Bowl season. Statistically, he hasn't been the same. So I was impressed with Sean McVay getting Jared Goff to the Super Bowl. Entering the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, going up against the greatest quarterback, head coach combination in the NFL, and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the Rams had a chance to win the Super Bowl. They had a chance to win the Super Bowl. And in 4 years as being the head coach of the LA Rams, Sean McVay, he's 43-21, which means he's won 67% of his games. He's made the playoffs in 3 out of 4 years, and he's 6-3 in the postseason with Jared Goff. So Sean McVay has proven he is a quality NFL head coach. Again, he has pressure on him because the last few years, statistically, the Rams, they have dropped in total rankings since their Super Bowl year. So that's why he has pressure on him. He has pressure on him because of what he's already accomplished and where he's already had the LA Rams as an offense. He's proven as a head coach. Sean McVay has proven that he can coach in the NFL. He's proven that he can win playoff games in the NFL. Matthew Stafford, meanwhile, has one of the worst win percentages among starting quarterbacks with 150 starts since 2000. Since 2000, Matthew Stafford, this is 150 starts amongst NFL quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford He's 74, 90, and 1, which means he's won 45% of his games. He has a worse winning percentage than Jay Cutler, Eli Manning, and Carson Palmer. Jay Cutler, he's went 74 and 79, which he's won 48% of his games as a starting NFL quarterback. Eli Manning, Mr. Inconsistent, he has 117 wins, 117 losses. So he is a 500 quarterback. He's won 50% of his games. Carson Palmer, he's went 92, 88, and 1. He's won 51% of his games. All of those quarterbacks have a better winning percentage than Matthew Stafford. Even Andy Dalton got the Bengals to the playoffs. My man Deshawn Watson, in his 4 years being a starting quarterback for the Houston Texans, he's gotten the Texans to the postseason and made some noise 2 out of 4 years. And this past year, he had close to 5,000 passing yards with nobodies as his supporting cast. Nobodies. I know how great Matthew Stafford is. I know how great his arm talent is. I know he's one of the best throwers of the football in the NFL. He has 282 career touchdown passes, 144 interceptions, completing 63% of his passes. But Matthew Stafford, you couldn't win one playoff game in Detroit. You played with one of the greatest receivers in NFL history and Megatron. Okay? Megatron is big time. He was one of the best NFL receivers in NFL history. Matthew Stafford couldn't win one playoff game. In 3 playoff games, Matthew Stafford is 0-3, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, completing 63% of his passes. You couldn't win one playoff game? Not one? Not one. Like, I believe in Matthew Stafford. I think Matthew Stafford can win a Super Bowl in the right situation. When you ask the question, who has more pressure? In my eyes, it's Matthew Stafford, more so even than his head coach, Sean McVay. When you're a quarterback, they cover up for a lot of your weaknesses as a football team. We've seen Russell Wilson cover up for issues that the Seattle Seahawks have had in the past. Last year, statistically, the Packers defense was one of the worst defenses in NFL history. After 4 games, Aaron Rodgers had the Packers at 4-0. They were 4-0 after 4 games last year. So we've seen quarterbacks put a Band-Aid on the rest of the team's weaknesses on, around the team. And for whatever reason, Matthew Stafford just hasn't been able to have any postseason success with the Detroit Lions. I know the Detroit Lions are one of the worst teams in the NFL. They're one of the worst organizations in the NFL. But you couldn't win one playoff game, Matt? Not one. And then when you look at the NFC North, the only consistent competition that Matthew Stafford has had is Aaron Rodgers. He's the only competition that Matthew Stafford has had to go up against. That's it. The Chicago Bears, they haven't been able to find a quarterback in multiple years to run their franchise. The Minnesota Vikings, they haven't had a quarterback that was elite since Brett Favre. Kirk Cousins is not elite. He is okay. He's average, but he isn't elite. So the Vikings haven't had an elite quarterback since Brett Favre. The Chicago Bears, they've never had an elite quarterback in their franchise history. So your only competition in the NFC North has been Aaron Rodgers. That's the only competition. it's a put up or shut up year for Matthew Stafford. Put up or shut up year for Matthew Stafford, and the pressure is on Matthew Stafford more so than Sean McVay. Give me your thoughts. Who do y'all believe has the more pressure heading into this season? Is it Matthew Stafford or is it head coach Sean McVay? Let's transition back to some NBA, as Netflix recently released a documentary, and Jermaine O'Neal, he is the executive producer of the Malice at the Palace. Friday, November 19th, 2004, at the Palace in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Y'all all know about the brawl that took place, in the game between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. So I watched the documentary, and Jermaine O'Neal did an outstanding job as executive producer of this film. He did an outstanding job. It's called Untold, about the Malice in the Palace. It's on Netflix right now. Go and check it out. So y'all know Ron Artest, after the situation, Ron Artest got suspended for the rest of the season. Steven Jackson got suspended for 30 games. Jermaine O'Neal was suspended for 25 games, reduced after an arbitrator looked over the case. And Reggie Miller, he retired at the end of the season. So y'all know the situation pretty much. Ben Wallace, went up for a layup. Ron Artest fouls him. But before that, Jamal Tinsley had told Ron Artest that you can get your foul now, dating back to a previous encounter that took place in the Eastern Conference Finals the year before. Because y'all remember, the Pistons, they won a championship the year before, going up against Kobe Shaq Lakers. And, Karl Malone was on that team. Gary Payton was on that team. They were past their primes. And as great defensively as the Detroit Pistons were, Kobe and Shaq still were the favorites to win the championship. But in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pistons, they had a tough series against the Indiana Pacers. Going up against Ron Artest, Jermaine O'Neal, Reggie Miller. That was a tough, grueling battle in the Eastern Conference. So the Indiana Pacers at the time, this was early in the season. The Indiana Pacers, they wanted to prove that they were the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. They had just traded for Steven Jackson. Reggie Miller, he was still searching for his first NBA championship. Rick Carlisle, I believe, was the head coach of the Indiana Pacers at the time. And so let's talk about the untold Malice at the Palace. 9 players got suspended for 146 total games. So there's a few takeaways that I had after watching the Malice at the Palace. Number 1, at the time, I supported the players. And 17 years later, I still support the players in this altercation that took place at the Palace of Auburn Hills. So I want to get that out there. They said after the situation took place, the next day, people in the media, they were giving the players the perception as being thugs. And I think that was absolutely ridiculous. I was on the players' side at the time of the incident, and I'm still on the players' side at this moment. I want to get that out there. Also, after watching the documentary, and even back 17 years ago, when you watch the footage of what took place at the Palace that night, had the drink not got thrown on Ron Artest, name is Metta World Peace now. He might have changed it since he named himself Ron, Metta World Peace, but Ron Artest was his name at the time. Had the drink not got thrown on Ron Artest, the situation would not have escalated the way that it did. The skirmish that took place after Ron Artest fouled Ben Wallace, it happens all the time in the NBA. All the time. And to be honest, Ron Artest's foul on Ben Wallace wasn't really a hard foul. It wasn't really a hard foul. Now, after it was all said and done, there were reports about how Ben Wallace, he had lost his brother at that time. So that's why you saw Ben Wallace, and rightfully so, act out in frustration. He had just recently lost his brother. So I understand why Ben Wallace was frustrated. They said that he wasn't even supposed to play in the game. So you can understand why he was so frustrated the way that he was. But I didn't believe Ron Artest's foul was really hard. And after the foul, I thought the officials had calmed everything down. There were no punches thrown. Everything seemed to be under control until this fan named John Green decided to involve himself and do something unnecessary by throwing the cup at Artest. And by the way, they said that Ron Artest and John Green, they are now friends. I don't know how the hell that came about. Steven Jackson, he was on the Breakfast Club. Jermaine O'Neal, they both spoke out about how they don't really like the fact that Ron Artest is friends now with John Green because he started the entire situation and escalated the situation. If it wasn't for him throwing the cup on Ron Artest, the brawl never happens. Also, I thought Ron Artest handled himself the right way before going up in the stands. Even though it was justified, you can't go up in the stands in that situation. But it was justified, and he still was wrong. I thought he made the right move by going on the scores table, trying to calm himself down, and stand calm in that moment. He also went and apologized to Ben Wallace after the hard foul. He went and apologized to Ben Wallace, trying to avoid the altercation. So I thought Ron Artest did the right thing by going to sit on the scores table. They said at the time he was practicing, staying calm in situations and just being relaxed. I thought he did a great job with that at first. So those are my few takeaways. Another one, I didn't understand how 10 minutes went by with no security or police to control the situation. I mean, you watch the footage and I was watching the game live. There was at least 10 minutes that went by before the police finally was able to get control of the situation. And then the craziest part of the brawl was when the police finally did come, instead of defending the players, they were ready to mace Ron Artest. Reggie Miller spoke about this on the Dan Patrick Show a few years ago when talking about the brawl. Instead of defending the players from the fans who were acting belligerent and were out of control, the police, they were ready to mace Ron Artest. And then the craziest part about it, and Steven Jackson spoke about this in the documentary, the police, they didn't even recognize Reggie Miller. How the hell you don't recognize Reggie Miller? Even though Reggie Miller didn't play in that game because he had a broken finger, this is Reggie Miller, one of the greatest shooters in NBA history, a 5-time All-Star, one of the greatest players to ever wear a Pacers uniform. How didn't they recognize Reggie Miller? That made no sense to me. Made no sense. Steven Jackson, he's a real one. He's a real one. And I respect him riding for his brothers and having their back in a situation like that. You could tell Steven Jackson, man, he one of the few real ones we got left, out here, because he didn't know what the situation was. But because Ron Artest was on his team, and because Ron Artest, was a brother to him, you see why he defended Ron Artest and went up in the stands to defend Ron Artest in that moment. And you know, on the All the Smoke podcast with Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson always talks about, being there for his brother. So shout out to Steven Jackson, man. He was honestly the missing piece for the Indiana Pacers to go on a championship run. He was a missing piece. Also, in the documentary, they talked about how once the players finally got back to the locker room, Jermaine O'Neal and Ron Artest, they got into another altercation. And they said the reason why was because Jermaine O'Neal was upset that the situation took place in the first place. I think Jermaine O'Neal did an outstanding job with this documentary, being the executive producer. I think Jermaine O'Neal had a nice career even after the brawl. He's done a lot for, where he's from in South Carolina. He's done a lot, since this situation took place, in the Palace in Auburn Hills. But I think he was wrong in this situation. I understand his adrenaline was pumping in that moment, and he was upset about it, the altercation and everything that was going on. I believe if Ron Artest didn't have the perception that he had at that particular moment, I don't believe Jermaine O'Neal would have been upset with Ron the way that he was if it was someone else. Ron Artest at that time, he had the perception as being a player who basically played over the top. He played excessive. He would go the extra mile and kind of had that reputation as being a dirty player. Okay? He had a reputation as being a dirty player. So I believe because of his, and he also had, he had, issues that were documented about his, anger issues that he was dealing with. Because of his perception and his reputation, that's why Jermaine O'Neal reacted the way that he did once they got back to the locker room. I think Steven Jackson had to step in the middle of it, and other players in the locker room had to step in the middle of the situation. If that's not Ron Artest, I don't believe Jermaine O'Neal reacts that way. Because even though Ron Artest, Steven Jackson, Jermaine O'Neal, they were wrong for, putting their hands on fans, it was justified. It was justified. You got thousands of fans, attacking you. Your life is at risk. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen in a situation like that. You don't know what's going to happen. So it was justified. And I understand why Jermaine O'Neal was upset the way that he was, but I don't think he was right for being upset with Ron Artest in the immediate aftermath of the altercation. But again, because of Ron Artest's, reputation, that's why he was upset. Also, I understand why Jermaine O'Neal and Steven Jackson had an issue with Ron Artest requesting to be traded the following season. Because they felt like, damn, we got suspended, got our entire season ruined because of a situation that started with you, Ron. It was you. Even though you were justified for going in the stands, you were justified, the situation started because of you. I understand why Jermaine O'Neal and Steven Jackson were upset, because they felt like, we got to finish the job. We were a true championship contender. And that night against the Detroit Pistons, the Pacers outplayed the Pistons. They outplayed them. And they were sending a message, we are the best team in the Eastern Conference. Y'all might have won a championship last year, and y'all beat us in the Eastern Conference Finals in the previous year. But we are the best team in the Eastern Conference. So they were on a mission to get back to the NBA Finals. And I understand why Jermaine O'Neal and Steven Jackson were upset with Ron Artest for requesting a trade, because it gives vibes like you bailed out on us. You gave up on us. We were, for everything that we went through, and you just gonna bail and request a trade because you don't want to deal with issues and having to come back and play for this Indiana Pacers team I thought that was a weak move by Ron Artest. And Ron Artest, to his credit, he spoke up about this situation after he won a championship with Kobe and the Lakers when they beat the Boston Celtics and Paul Pierce and the crew. So, last thing, that was Reggie Miller's last chance to win a championship. That was his last chance to win a championship. He went on to retire later on that season. And as great as a player as Reggie Miller is, all those years running into Michael Jordan and not being able to win a championship, having his aspirations of being an NBA champion, losing those aspirations because of the Malice at the Palace is very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. And I know it's something that bothers Reggie Miller. Being a competitor that Reggie Miller is, I know it bothers him because they had a legitimate chance to win a championship that year. The Pistons went on to repeat as Eastern Conference champions, and they got to the finals and they lost to the San Antonio Spurs. But I think given the fact that the Pacers were such a great defensive team, they could have beaten the San Antonio Spurs. It went 7 games with Detroit and San Antonio. It could have went 7 games with Indiana and San Antonio as well. So I know that's something that really, really bothers Reggie Miller. I know it really bothers him. But those are my overall takeaways from the Untold Malice at the Palace. Go and check it out right now. It's on Netflix. Jermaine O'Neal is the executive producer of the film. He did an outstanding job producing this film. And one more thing before I move on. I think Jermaine O'Neal was the most affected by the Malice at the Palace. Because, again, Ron Artest, he went on to win a championship with Kobe and the Lakers. Steven Jackson went on to win a championship with the San Antonio Spurs. And Jermaine O'Neal, even though he still had a nice career and still balled out, you just felt like he never really got another chance to compete for an NBA championship. So I think he was the most affected by the brawl. Let's transition back to some NBA. And let's talk about Tim Tebow as the Jacksonville Jaguars. They released Tim Tebow Tuesday morning. And Tebow went on Twitter and made a tweet. He said, "Thankful for all the highs and even the lows, the opportunities and the setbacks. I've never wanted to make decisions out of fear of failure, and I'm grateful for the chance to have pursued a dream." That was Tim Tebow after being released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Are you surprised that Tim Tebow didn't make the final roster? I'm not surprised Tim Tebow didn't make the final roster. I never expected Tebow to make the team. The Jacksonville Jaguars have the worst roster in the NFL. So I told y'all earlier, I don't really believe that Trevor Lawrence is going to have team success in his rookie season. I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars will compete for a wild card spot. I don't believe they'll compete for a playoff spot at all. So I think they have one of the worst rosters in the NFL. Tim Tebow couldn't even make this roster. The only reason that Tim Tebow was allowed at camp was because of Urban Meyer. This was a classic case of it's not what you know, it's who you know. And Tebow benefited from the fact that he had all of that success at the University of Florida, winning a Heisman Trophy, winning a national championship, or 2 national championships at Florida because I was a Gators fan at the time. He benefited from having all that success with Urban Meyer being his head coach at Florida. The man hasn't played in 8 years. He just turned 34 Saturday. How in the hell do you expect to make the team under these circumstances, Tim Tebow? You haven't played in 8 years. You're 34 years old. You've never played tight end at any point in your football career, ever. In the early part of Tebow's career, there were people that told Tebow maybe you should try to play tight end because you can't play quarterback. You're not going to be a quarterback at the NFL level. So won't you try to play tight end? Tim Tebow wanted to play quarterback, and he wanted to do it his way. So when you want to do it your way, you have to understand the consequences that come with doing it your way. Sometimes you have to change. And because he wasn't, because he didn't want to change at the early part of his career, that's the reason why Tim Tebow wasn't able to have a successful NFL career. He was never going to be an NFL quarterback. It was never going to happen. He had a chance had he switched positions and maybe played tight end to be successful. But Tebow wanted to do it his way. And when you want to do it your way, the chances of you succeeding are highly unlikely if you don't adapt. You have to adapt. And Tebow was given an opportunity that most other people don't get. He was out of the league for 8 years. And the only reason he had a chance to compete in training camp was because he had Urban Meyer as his head coach. The 31 other NFL teams in the NFL would not have brought Tim Tebow to training camp. It only happened because of his relationship with Urban Meyer and because he has ties to the Jacksonville area. And he had success at the University of Florida. The man failed at one position and got a call to come to training camp and compete at another position. That's not an opportunity that most other players get in sports, not just in the NFL, but in sports, period. So it's over. Tim Tebow, his time in the NFL has come to an end, as it should. We can now move on with the rest of the NFL season, and we can finally see if Trevor Lawrence is going to have a good rookie campaign. It's done. Everybody, remember to follow Wise Guys on Twitter at WiseGuys_X. Also on Facebook, Wise Guys. Be sure to follow Wise Guys on Instagram at These Guys Know Sports. I'm Trey Larkins, your host on the Worldwide Sports Network. I'll be back live Friday night talking all the latest in sports news. So check me out Friday night, 8 p.m. on the Worldwide Sports Network. Y'all have a great night. Enjoy your Wednesday night.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.